Okay, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I'd like to dedicate this year in honor of Shoshana Dina Bas Leah, my wife, who celebrated with me together our 10th anniversary last week. And it's because of her that I'm able to continue doing what I'm doing, and for that appreciation, we dedicate that shiur this year. So we start off with the pasuk as follows. Psukim in Megillah, in the fourth parak of Megillah Esther, it's discussing the back and forth of once Mordechai found out about Haman's decree that he wants to eradicate all of us. So he sends word to Esther. Esther did not know about it yet, and there's a lot of back and forth there in the fourth parak of the Megillah, until Mordechai suggests that Esther go ahead and willingly go into Achashverosh's room. And Esther responds, and that's over here in Pasuk Tezayin. She tells him, "Leich kinois es kol haYehudim, go gather all the Jews, hanimtzaim b'Shushan, all the Jews that are here in Shushan, v'tzomu alai, and fast for me. Val tochlu, val tishu." She's very redundant in her expression. Fast, don't eat, don't drink. Shoshas yamim, 3 days, laila v'yom, night and day. Gamani v'naros atzum, and I and my maidservants will also fast. And then v'chein ava el hamelech, with that schus, I'll be able to come into the king's room, ashaloi kados, which is against the rules. V'kasher avadati, and if I get lost, I get lost. And we, for those who were with us last year, we spoke out in a very interesting discussion over here that it comes out that at this point Esther was going willingly into Achashverosh's room, and that was considered her full-fledged marriage to Achashverosh, and that was a question because she was married to Mordechai. That's for last year's discussion. The pasuk continues, Vayavar Mordechai vayatzk kol asher tzivso of Esther, and Mordechai carried out all Esther's words. And seemingly from the simple understanding, art school translation of the psukim, it seems like that all the Jews in Shushan at that time fasted 3 nights and 3 days, and Esther, we know, went in, and she was successful, and we all live happily ever after. So the first Malcolm after these psukim, I copied from the Sefer Sifsei Chachamim. The Sifsei Chachamim is a Achron, early 20th century Achron on Masechtas Megillah, and in his introduction to Masechtas Megillah, he just outlines very well the chronological order of the events, which I think is important here that we all have arranged properly before we continue our discussion. So the Sifsei Chachamim, not the same Sifsei Chachamim which is on Rashi. It's a different Sefer. Sifsei Chachamim on 3 Masechtas, Brachos, Rosh Hashanah, and Megillah. So okay, over here in his introduction to Megillah, he introduces us to just a couple of basic chronological facts. That first of all, the story of the Megillah of Haman going to Achashverosh happened in the year 3404 from Bria Sa'ilam, which is 2,371 years ago, according to my mathematical equation. If I figured it out, if we're in 5775 minus 3404, that's 2,371 years ago. At that point is when Haman approached Achashverosh with his grand idea to go ahead and eradicate all the Jews. Who needs them anyway? Achashverosh buys into it, literally, because Haman gave him a lot of cash. And on the 13th day of Nisan of that year of, again, 3404, that on Yud Gimel Nisan is the day where Haman issued his decree, signed with the stamp of the king, that all Jews will be killed in 11 months' time from now on Yud Gimel Adar. So the decree was passed on the 13th day of Nisan, that in 11 months' time approximately, on the 13th day of Adar, is when the Jews will get killed out. Immediately Mordechai springs into action, notifies Esther of this, and that whole back and forth of Perek Dalet that we spoke about before in the Megillah happened on this day, on the 13th day of Nisan. Can you imagine all the excitement for, besides the fact it was Erev Pesach almost, now that the Jews are finding out that they're going to get killed in a couple of months. But Mordechai does this whole back and forth with Esther, and Esther tells him, okay, start the whole fast procedure. So it comes out that the fast started the next day, that evening, which is Yud Dalet Nisan, Erev Pesach, Tezvav Nisan, the first day of Nisan, and Tezayin Nisan. On the last day of Tezayin Nisan, on the fast, which is the second day of Pesach, is when Esther approached Achashverosh with the whole Suda, and it was relatively a quick procedure in that day, ready by the end of the day.
Chametz free Suda.
Oh, okay. Singly, I mean, that kidney is probably, I don't know, So, by the time the end of the second day of Pesach was coming to an end already, Haman was already hung, and the Jews were celebrating already by the end of the second day of Pesach, Haman's dead. So just put it into perspective, within 3 days, 3.5 days basically, for when Haman passed his decree, he's now on the gallows, dead. This happened.
Can you repeat what happened on the 14th?
On the 14th day was the first full day of the fast.
Okay.
Then the second day of the fast was the 15th day of Nisan, and the 16th day of Nisan, which is the second day of Pesach, is when Esther did the whole thing with the Suda and getting Achashverosh and Haman to come, and now by the end of that day, Haman's dead already. Okay, by the 16th. On the 16th is when Haman's dead. Right. Okay, I don't want to lose track here. 1 second. So we have the 16th day of Nisan that Haman is being hung. But the problem was that the decree against the Jews was still hanging, and the king, as we know, the Megillah says they couldn't retract it. So a couple months later, Esther approaches the king again and asks for for the Jews now to turn the tables against the Goyim and Haman as Haman's sons and that all their people who wanted to hurt them. And we know, so 11 months later, which is now the next year, 3,405, because it was right after Rosh Hashanah, is when the Jews fought against the Goyim on the 13th day of Nisan, and on Shushan it continued on to the 14th day of Nisan. So, Adar, I'm sorry, thank you, Adar. And it comes out, so the first Purim celebrated in some fashion was the year 3,405, and after that, Esther and Mordechai declared it as a public holiday, and therefore the first time we had Purim as a national holiday was in the year 3,406, which was 2,369 years ago. That's the chronological basic facts. Yeah.
We're saying this transpired in Adar. The whole thing happened in Nisan.
Nisan, but then the war happened in Adar. Haman was killed by himself on the 16th day of Nisan. Approximately 11 months later is when the war happened, right? And they fought on the 13th day of Adar, and then in Shushan continuing on to the 14th day of Adar, which is why Shushan Purim is on the 15th day, right? Okay, so again, we're celebrating Purim for roughly 2,300 and change years. Okay, so that's the basic chronological facts based on the introduction from this Sefer Sisei Chachamim. Now, where does he get some of his ideas from? It's called from Midrashim, various Gemaras. One Gemara which I want to highlight now is on number 3 on the papers. The Gemara Darshans, the pasuk which we quoted before, the pasuk which we said on top of the page, that Vayavar Mordechai literally means that Mordechai went through and carried through the decree. The Gemara over here, Darshans, in number 3 on the papers, and where it's bracketed off, Vayavar Mordechai. Mordechai carried out the decree. Amar Rav, we bring a drush in the name of Rav. Shehevir Yom Rishon Shal Pesach Taanis. It means, doesn't just mean he carried out the decree, but he, quote unquote, pun intended, passed over Pesach that year. They skipped over Pesach that year because the first day of Pesach everyone was fasting. They didn't have they weren't able to eat. So the Gemara darshans that year, because of the threat of, alright, he was over on Pesach, so to speak. It wasn't Avera. He was allowed to do that because it was a Hira Shab. Mordechai was part of the Anshe Knesset Agdala. He had a lot of licenses to do all types of things. And him and his Bezdin decreed at that point that this year Pesach is off. We're not celebrating Pesach this year. Everyone has to fast. So it comes out clear from this Gemara. And Rashi speaks out, like we spoke already, that the Cheshbon of the days. So it comes out that one of the days, the first day of Pesach, which is a mitzvah, the Araisa, even to eat matzah and to have Sudas Yom Tif and everything, Mordechai said this year there's no eating, we have to fast, we have to save our lives, and that was successful, and as we know, we all lived happily ever after. So we see that clear in the Gemara, that Rav's opinion is that we passed over Pesach that year.
The year 3406.
It was 3404. 3404, because that was the original decree. Okay, now we're up to the next page, number 4. The Gemara in Yevamos has a fascinating discussion, seemingly unrelated to Purim. The Gemara there is discussing, for those who just finished Yevamos in Daf Yomi, it should be semi-familiar. The Gemara there is discussing the halacha of a married woman whose husband, unfortunately, falls into a body of water. And we don't know what happened to him. So the Gemara, the Mishnah actually discusses different cases. There's 2 classifications of water, 2 categories. There's mayim that we call water she'ein lahem soif. That means it's not, you can't see the banks. Say you're standing on the edge of the Mississippi River, so to speak, not too far from here, and you can't see where it ends. It's seemingly endless. Now, of course, it's confined to a certain area, but when you're standing on the banks of the river, it's seemingly endless. That's called mayim she'ein lahem soif. Mayim that you cannot see where it ends. So chas v'shalom, a married man would fall into the water. The halach is his wife is not permitted to remarry, because since we cannot see all the edges of the water, we don't know. Perhaps he was able to get out at a different part of the river and he's still alive. We cannot allow the woman to remarry until we have evidence, proof that for sure he never got out of the water and for sure he has passed away, and then she'll be able to remarry. But if we have no evidence that just the fact that he fell into a river, she would still be forbidden to remarry. She's an aguna. However, let's say the husband or the man would fall into a body of water which is contained, even if it's very large, but standing at an area you can see where all the water ends, you can see all the banks, it's a smaller lake or something like that, then we have a machlokes. Rav Meir says she is still forbidden to get remarried, and Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi and others hold that she is allowed to get remarried, because if we see that she didn't get out and we can see all the areas of the water, so it's obvious that the husband didn't make it out alive, he's somewhere on the bottom of the lake. However, Amir says no. I have a story where Meir says where I saw a person fall into a body of water that was contained, and they waited for, let's just say, for argument's sake, an hour, so to speak, an amount of time that seemingly no one could survive in water for that long underwater. Even Harry Houdini couldn't survive that long underwater. And 3 days later, the guy emerges from the water, smiling ear to ear. And so we see, says Rav Meir, that such a thing is possible. So therefore, even if a married man would fall into a body of water which is contained, it's ma'im sheyesh lahem saif, we would not allow the woman to remarry. And the Gemara now, we're up to this Gemara now, we're going to quote from this Gemara on page number 4, on the second page of the booklet, where the Gemara says that Tanna Kama responds to Rav Meir and say, no, we don't like your case, your story, because your story is considered a Maisa Nisim. It's considered a story of a miracle. And then the Gemara gets on to a lengthy discussion, what exactly is the miracle that the Tanna Kama did not like of Rav Meir. So the first suggestion of the Gemara is, maybe the reason why the Tanna Kama called it a miracle was because the guy was underwater for 3 days, he didn't eat or drink for 3 days. Not eating or drinking for 3 days, that'll be the end of him. A person can't survive 72 hours without food or water. The Gemara says, no, that can't be the miracle. Why not? Because we have an explicit pasuk in Megillah Esther, like we just quoted, that all the Jews in Shushan in the times of the Purim miracle fasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Therefore, says the Gemara, it can't be that it's impossible for a person to survive for 3 days, and therefore the Gemara goes on to alternative explanations what might have been the nace, why the Tanna Kama didn't want to accept Rav Meir's opinion, and we're not going to get involved in that discussion right now. It's beyond the scope of this topic. But again, the Gemara proving from the story of Purim that it's possible for a human being to survive for 3 days without food or drink from the Psukim in Megillah Esther. Okay, that's the Gemara. Comes along the Aruch LaNer, a 19th century Achron on the Gemara, and he says as follows. First of all, he lets us know that the Medrash in the Yalkut Shemaini on Megillah Esther argues on this Gemara. And the Medrash there asks, what does it mean that they fasted 3 days and 3 nights? That's impossible. How can people survive for 3 days and 3 nights without food or drink? The Medrash therefore concludes that they only fasted daytime hours, and at nighttime hours they ate. The pasuk seemingly says, like we started off with, that the pasuk says, Al tochlu val tishtu shlosh, don't eat or don't drink 3 days, laila v'yom, night and day. Says the Aruch LaNer, you have to explain that according to the Medrash, the pasuk means the first day of the Taanis was a night and day Taanis. Meaning, so Yud Dal Nisan, which was the first Taanis, they started at night, which is so the end of Yud Gimel Nisan going into Yudal was a nighttime fast and a daytime fast, like Yom Kippur, like Tisha B'Av. We do a whole 25-hour fast, so to speak. But the subsequent fasts of the 16th, of the 15th and 16th day of Nisan, those were only daytime hours fast, and according to the Medrash, they ate at night. So it comes out according to the Medrash that they at night a Seder. Right?
What did Mordechai pass over? He says they levatel Pesach.
We'll get there in a minute. Hold on. What did Mordechai?
Just the first night.
No, the first night is Erev Pesach, and the whole day of Erev Pesach they fasted. But the first night of Pesach, which is the 15th day of Nisan, according to the Medrash, according to the Aruch LaNer explained the Medrash, they had a delicious Seder. They could have had all their matzah, all their mora, whatever they wanted to eat, all their arba kaisis. That was no problem according to the Medrash.
On what night?
On the 15th night, which is the first night of Pesach. The only time they had a full day fast, says the Aruch LaNer, based on the Medrash, is the first day of the fast, which was the 14th day of Nisan. So he says, now that we have a bona fide machlokes, our Gemara in Yevamos and the Medrash Rabbah, we can answer the following question. Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz, in the Sefer Yaris Devash, which is Drashos from Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz, he asked the following question, a very nuanced type of question in the exact lashon of the Gemara. He asks, why did the Gemara say that Mordechai was ma'avir, he, so to speak, passed over Pesach? And seeming like that Mordechai abolished the Suda of Pesach. There's a much more fundamental mitzvah that Mordechai skipped over that year. That is the mitzvah of Achilas Matzah. Achilas Matzah is a mitzvah de Araisa, even if we don't have the Beis HaMikdash. So ask the Yaris Devash, why did the Gemara only point out that Mordechai skipped the seemingly the meal of Pesach, which just seems like the Einig Yontif of it, the Simcha of it? Why didn't the Gemara say more exact that Mordechai skipped out the mitzvah of Achilas Matzah? It's a diak in a lashon. Again, the Gemara said that he skipped over Pesach in general, which was like, amazing thing. He cut Pesach out that year. Why did the Gemara say even more? Not just Pesach as a yontif, as a simcha, as a einig of it. Rather, Mordechai cut out the eating of matzah. Matzah is a mitzvah d'oraisa. That was the Yaris Tavash's question. So says the Aruch LaNer, perhaps we can suggest that the Gemara in Megillah, Rav, which is the Shita of Rav, understands like the Medrash. And the Medrash says clearly that they ate at night. So they ate the mitzvah of matzah. So the Gemara in Megillah cannot say that they skipped out the mitzvah of achilas matzah because the Jews ate matzah the first night of Pesach, like the Medrash says, because they only fasted daytime hours on the day of Pesach. Therefore, says the Aruch LaNer, we can answer again the questions, why did the Gemara say they skipped over matzah? The answer is they didn't skip over matzah because at night they had the mitzvah of achilas matzah. The only thing they missed was the daytime suda. So that is also a mitzvah of simcha or eining on Yom Tiv, however you exactly want to term it. But the point is, that's a lighter, quote-unquote, mitzvah than the mitzvah of achilas matzah. Therefore, the Gemara just says that Mordechai was ma'avir Pesach in general, didn't say specifically matzah. That's the first option of the Aruch LaNer, and it comes out that the Gemara in Yevamos does not coincide with the opinion of Rav in the Gemara Megillah. Rather, Rav is working with the opinion of the Medrash that they ate matzah at night. That's teretz number 1 of the Aruch LaNer. Here comes teretz number 2. Says the Aruch LaNer, another suggestion, how we can explain the Gemara in Megillah as follows. Really, Rav could agree with the Gemara that and not with the Medrash, that they fasted 3 nights and 3 days. So why didn't the Gemara say, the Yaris Tavash's question, why didn't the Gemara say they skipped matzah? Says the Aruch LaNer, they didn't skip matzah, because as follows. What's the spitz, the main Taanis, or the only Taanis that we have in the Torah, that is the Taanis of Yom Kippur? How does the Torah classify Yom Kippur? The Torah never tells us in the pasuk by Yom Kippur, do not eat. Rather, it says, "V'inisem es nafshay seichem." We should afflict our souls. We should afflict ourselves. And from there, the Gemara expounds all the various restrictions and prohibitions of Yom Kippur: eating, drinking, anointing ourselves, etc. All those Yom Kippur prohibitions. But we see that the expression of inui is the term used by Yom Kippur, and there the Gemara in Yuma tells us, since the Torah does not use the word achila by Yom Kippur, rather it uses the word inui, the Gemara in Yuma tells us that teaches us a very important halacha of Yom Kippur. A little more background here for a minute. Typically, when we say something is usher to eat, let's say, for example, it's forbidden for a yid to eat chazer or nevela. So the pasuk there is to use the lashon of achila, of eating. And Chazal tell us, anytime the Torah uses the lashon of achila, that implies that the shiur is always a kazayas, an olive's worth, volumes of worth of food. That means that the only time you get to einish, the only time the punishment will come, for example, chaylev, the Esther of chaylev, and the punishment for that is kares. When is a person chas v'shalom chayiv kares if you ate chaylev? That's only if you ate a shiur of a kazayas, because the Torah they use lashon of achila. So we have achila equals kazayas. However, says the Gemara in Yuma, since by Yom Kippur the Torah never used the word achila, rather uses the word inui, so the Gemara says we have the right to learn a different shiur, not kizayas, rather the shiur of a kaiseves, of a date, because a date which is larger than a volume of a olive, until a person eats that amount, the Gemara says it's not yisuve daita. He's not at peace with himself. It's true he ate something. He's maybe not famished, but he has no real nourishment from an olive. An olive is this size, right? So a day is a little bigger, so you get a little more. But so the Gemara says from the fact that the Torah uses the word inui by Yom Kippur, we have the shiur of a kaiseves. Again, so now comes the Aruch LaNer and says fancy footwork over here. The shiur of a Taanis, as you see for Yom Kippur, is the amount of inui, which is the amount of a date. So until someone eats a date, he has not, quote-unquote, broken his fast. He hasn't really broken his fast, because until you have that amount, you're still in the gather of inui, still in the gather of afflicting yourself. So it says the Aruch LaNer, but the mitzvah of matzah in the Torah is lashon of achila. We should eat matzah. So a person fulfills his obligation of eating matzah by eating only an olive's worth, a kazayas worth of matzah. So therefore, it suggests to Aruch LaNer that night of Pesach, when the Jews were fasting, they taka ate matzah. How much matzah did they eat? The minimum requirement, says the Aruch LaNer, which is only a kazayas. But it's still considered as if they fasted, because until a person eats a date volume, he's still considered as if he's it's still considered as if he's afflicting himself. So you get the key of the fulfillment of the affliction of the fast by eating less than a date's volume, but you get the mitzvah of eating matzah because you had a kazayas. So you have your cake and you eat it too, so to speak, right? So they ate matzah, says the Aruch LaNer, they ate matzah the night of the Seder. How much matzah they eat? Only the minimum requirement of a kazayas. I guess they knew exactly how much a kazayas is, because nowadays we're all confused how much a kazayas is. Everyone's eating this much matzah, although a kazayas is only this size. All right, but fine. But they knew exactly how much a kazayas was. They ate that amount, and they ate less than a keseves, less than a date's volume. They're still considered to be in the category of those who are fasting because they haven't, taken themselves, they haven't graduated from the afflicted state. They're still afflicted from the fast. But they've eaten matzah, so they've technically fulfilled the mitzvah of matzah. Ask the Aruch you'll ask on me. There's a basic principle in all shiurim, in all measurements of the Torah, that chatzi shiur is forbidden, meaning even half of the shiur is forbidden. I mean, when we said before that the einish for chaylev, for example, if someone chas shalom eats chaylev, the einish is only when he eats a kazayis, the olive's volume. So fine, that's only when the einish comes. What we learn out, it's actually machlekes if it's daraisa or darabana, but we have it's bona fide isser that a person can't even eat less. It happens to be you technically don't get punished in the severe punishment of it. It's still not vera. You don't get the severe punishment of kares until you eat the volume of an olive's worth. But to eat even a speck of chaylev, it's forbidden because of the principle of chatzi shiur asa min haTorah. So ask the Aruch on himself. You'll tell me fine. The shiur for a Taanis, as we see for Yom Kippur, is a kaiseves, is a date, and I said they ate a smaller size than a date because they ate a volume of an olive's worth of matzah, but it's supposed to be forbidden because of chatzi shiur. Chatzi shiur is aser. Says the Aruch perhaps that when Mordechai accepted it, and the Klal Yisrael at that time accepted upon themselves the fast, they accepted it with a built-in stipulation. We don't want to miss out on the mitzvah of matzah. We want to keep matzah. So he set a stipulation. We're going to fast, but we're going to make a lumdish fast. We're only accepting upon ourselves to fast in a way that from a date's volume and more is forbidden. But anything less than that, we're going to be allowed to eat so that we can still get the mitzvah of matzah. That's what the Aruch suggests. So again, at this point, let's recap what we have so far. We have the Gemara Megillah, which tells us very clear that Mordechai passed over Pesach. Skip Pesach that year. We have the question of the Yaris Devash. Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz asked the question of why did the Gemara say a more fundamental isser that they skipped out the basic mitzvah of achilas matzah. So the first teretz the Aruch suggested was that the Medrash argues on the Gemara. The Medrash says that at night they ate. Therefore, they ate the regular shiur of as much matzah as they wanted to eat at Pesach by the Seder. Therefore, the Gemara does not say they skipped over matzah. Only Gemara says they skipped over Pesach, which means the daytime meals of Pesach. That was option number one. Option number two, the Aruch said, was that, they fasted 3 days, but they ate the minimum requirement of matzah, which is a kazayis, but they did not, quote-unquote, break their fast because they did not eat more than a volume of a date.
At daytime.
Or any time, right, even at night. Right, and therefore the Gemara only said, right, even by the Seder, according to this option. Even by the Seder, they only ate the minimum requirement. Therefore, the Gemara can still consider it as if they fasted 3 days and 3 nights. But, and they still ate matzah. Therefore, the Gemara did not say they skipped out the mitzvah of matzah because they got the basic requirement of the mitzvah of matzah.
But what about the 4 glasses of wine and the haggadah?
Okay, good question. I don't know the answer to that. Seems like they didn't. It could be maybe they learned it wasn't. That's not really deraisa. It's not really deraisa. That's for another shiur. Maybe before Pesach we'll discuss.
It's okay. You're only saying words.
Right.
That mitzvah deraisa you could do. That's
right.
No problem.
Right.
Maybe it was a situation where Esther and her wine feast without Hashverosh was being osik in the Seder for everybody.
Okay. Well, you can't eat for me, and I can eat for you, right? Can you put on tefillin for me? Can't do that, right? Mitzvah shebagufay. Okay.
That was on the 7th.
Horashah, you could do anything.
Okay, fine. Harasha. Okay. Let's continue. The next page, which is number 6 in the booklet, there is a tshuva, someone in the days of Aruch. This tshuva was dated in the year 5613, which is 1853, 162 years ago, where a person got to say for this a Rav, or Meir Leib Liebval, I'm not sure who he was, he lived in Krakow. He got to Sefer Aruch, he probably read it cover to cover, and he got to this piece that we just spoke out, and he was very upset. And he asked Aruch the following question. He says, you give a very, the second shot that the Aruch said that they ate a volume's worth of an olive, the olive's worth, but not a date's worth, therefore, that whole technical issue that they fasted, but didn't really fast, says it's hard to understand that. He says, because the Gemara in Yuma explains specifically why by Yom Kippur we use the word inui. Why do we use the word ino there? And it's a couple lines into the piece over here. He says, but the Gemara in Yuma says, because the Torah can't use an expression of achila by Yom Kippur. Because if the Torah would say, thou shalt not eat on Yom Kippur, that would imply that even pachos make kazayis, that the shiur on Yom Kippur is a kazayis. And we know the shiur on Yom Kippur has to be a date's volume. So specifically by Yom Kippur, the Torah has to change its usage of the word and use the word inoy, affliction, as opposed to using the word achila, which is a typical word, to teach us this specific halacha. So it's special to Yom Kippur, this halacha, that a person could eat less than a date's volume worth and still be considered fasting. But that's exclusive to Yom Kippur. That would not apply to any other fast. Tishma, Shavasa B'Tammuz, Asar B'Tevis, Son Gedalia, or Taanis Esther. Those Tanaisim work with regular Dini Achila. Excuse me, they're older Rabbanon, and the Rabbanon said we cannot eat. Eating means even the olive's volume worth. And the pasuk even says specifically in the Megillah, like we said, Al Taichlu. Esther said, tell the Jews don't eat. Esther didn't say the Jews, Uta'anu es nafshay seichem, all the Jews should afflict themselves. She said, don't eat. Eating means a kazayas. So therefore, this Rameir Leib asked the Aruch LaNer, how can it be you're suggesting that the Jews ate a kazayas worth of matzah? The pasuk in the Megillah says specifically they did not eat. Eating implies even a kazayas worth. That's his question. Before the Aruch LaNer responds, this Rameir Leib, in the shayla over here, the questioner in this piece, he wants to suggest his own answer. And he gets involved with another fascinating machlokes, the Mishnah Melech, which is a sefer on the Rambam. Mishnah Melech has a suffix in general. Anytime we have a mitzvah to eat something, it's a positive commandment, eating matzah, or any other time we have a mitzvah to eat in the Torah, carbon, whatever the case is. If I eat it shaloi kederach achila, not in a typical fashion, let's say I crush up and pull into a pill form or something, or be creative, somehow, not a typical way of eating it, am I yotze the mitzvah or not? That's the question of the Mishnah Melech. Question up there. Says this Rameir Leib, I would like to bring a proof that yes, you are Yaitse. What's the proof? He says the Gemara Pesachim, we're not going to get too involved in the details there, but it has a discussion if this Gemara discusses the mitzvah of Simcha on Yom Tif and shechting the Shalmei Simcha, the karbanos we bring for the days of Yom Tif, and you have to have this delicious fresh meat on Yom Tif. You have to have it all days of Sukkot and the days of Pesach. Great, good steak every day, right? The Gemara there says that, however, on Shabbos, it's not possible to do that. Why? Because even if you have a case where it would be permissible to shech, and certain karbanos we're allowed to be shechted, we don't get involved there exactly when and where, but even if you have an example, if we have a carbon of a tzibur which is permitted to shecht on Shabbos, however, that would only permit the shechita. It would not permit the roasting of the meat. So the Gemara there says you would not have simcha, you would not have the enjoyment of eating meat. Good, you can eat raw meat. In those days, they ate raw meat, but raw meat is eating, but it's not simchadik. You don't get a geschmack out of it. It's kind of, doesn't have such good flavor. And even if you put on ketchup or barbecue sauce, it doesn't taste the same, right? So this Rameir Leib wants to be medayik that we see from here that eating raw meat, you're yaitz to the din of eating. You get the mitzvah of eating the carbon. The only problem the Gemara had with it, that you don't have the simcha of it. So he wants to bring a ride that anytime you have shaloi kederach achila, because raw meat is not considered a typical way to eat something. You usually eat meat cooked or roasted, whatever it is, or baked, whatever you want. But somehow it's dealt with, right? You don't eat raw, so it's considered eating if you eat the raw meat, but it's not considered simchadik. It's not considered as if you've done it in a way of bakavdik for yontif. So he says, based on that diik, we can suggest as follows. In the days of Mordechai, in this time of where they decreed the fast, perhaps they ate the matzah, but they ate matzah shaloi kederach achila. Now he doesn't give a creative example how that was done. Maybe they ate gebrux, and they crushed it up, and they mixed it with water, and they somehow ate it in a funny way. I don't know exactly. They put it into a pill form. I'm not sure. You could choose your own adventure how they figured out how they got shaloi kederach achila. But if you have shaloi kederach achila, so that's considered, you could be yaitz to the mitzvah of matzah, but you not get the mitzvah of simcha. So when you have the mitzvah of matzah and not the mitzvah of simcha, that's why the Gemara said specifically in Megillah, the Gemara said that Mordechai was ma'avir, they skipped over Pesach that year. They didn't skip over the mitzvah of matzah, they skipped over the mitzvah of Pesach, i.e. the mitzvah of having sudas besimcha. Did they eat something? Yeah, they ate matzah shaloi kederach achila in some funny way, so they technically got the mitzvah of eating matzah, but they did not get the mitzvah of simchas yom tov, says Rameir Leib, and therefore we give another possible answer to the question of the Aris Tavash. Why the Gemara did not say that they skipped over the mitzvah of matzah? They didn't. They had another chappy way how to eat matzah, i.e. shaloi kederach achila, not in a typical fashion, but since they ate it in such a way, they are yaitz to the mitzvah of eating, but they weren't yaitz to the mitzvah of simchas yom tov. That's what he wants to suggest, and he wanted the Aruch LaNer's opinion if he likes his answer or not. And he wanted an Aruch LaNer's opinion if he agrees with his question on his pshat. Again, he asked on Aruch LaNer's pshat that seemingly that halacha of inoy, of affliction, is limited to Yom Kippur. So the Aruch LaNer doesn't respond in regards to whether or not he liked this pshat shalei kederach achila. He leaves it quiet, doesn't say. I guess either he liked it or didn't like it, I don't know. I think it's an interesting pshat. But he does defend himself. He wants to explain as follows. He says, it's true that by Yom Kippur we find this expression of Inui, However, Misvara, he says, to him it makes sense. He doesn't have a proof to what he's saying. He says, but logically, he says, Mistavra to him is that in the days of Mordechai, they would not accept upon himself anything more than Inui, anything more than a Torah Dika fast. A Torah Dika fast, which is the only case is Yom Kippur, there it's classified as, as we said, like as affliction. That's the word the Torah uses. So it can't be, he says, Misvar, doesn't make sense to him, they accepted upon himself anything more than Inui. You asked me that the Pasuk says explicitly in the Megillah that Al Toichlu, they didn't eat, and Achila in the Torah always means a shiur of a kazayas. He says, no. There's another Gemara which tells us we have a license to say at certain times Lashon HaTorah l'chud v'Lashon Nevi'im l'chud. That the Torah uses a certain word and the Navi could use the same word, the word achila, and the Torah has one implication of it and the Navi has another implication of it. Meaning, when the Gemara always tells us that the word achila connotes the shiur of a kazayas, that's always using words from the Torah. Achila of the Torah. Once we graduate from the 5 books of Moses and now go into the books of the Nevi'im or the Ksuvim, books of the prophets, although it's technically the same word, achila, but we're not limited to that understanding of the way the Gemara understands the word of the Torah. And although it's true, the Megillah Esther used the word achila, al toichel, don't eat, but I'm not limited to say it only means a kazayas. I have a license to say that it can mean even the shiur of a date. So the Aruch LaNer defends himself to some level, and it says you can still say my pshat. My pshat is still tenable in understanding the pshat in the nace of Mordechai and Esther, and they fasted 3 days, but they ate, according to Aruch LaNer, the shiur of an olive's volume worth of matzah, and they cut short before a date's volume, and therefore they had their matzah, but they fasted in regards to the halacha of fasting, and therefore the Gemara says, in Megillah, that they only skipped over Pesach, but did not skip over the mitzvah of matzah. Along in the same line of reasoning, Reb Chaim Ozer Grzensky, who was the leader of European Jewry before World War II, he passed away around the beginning of the war, in his shuvas in Sefer Achiezer, he's involved over there. I only cut out part of it, but I'll give you a little background information. He has a big shuva there discussing the halachas of chatzi shiur, which we briefly discussed before. The halacha of chatzi shiur, that even a half of a shiur is forbidden. The Gemara in Yuma tells us it's a machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Is it asa mid'araisa or d'Rabbanan? Rabbi Yochanan learns it's asa mid'araisa, and Reish Lakish learns only asa mid'Rabbanan. At first, the Gemara introduced us to Rabbi Yochanan's opinion that chatzi shiur is asa mid'araisa with a svara, with a logic that it's chazi l'tzarufei. We can't allow you to go ahead and eat half the shiur or even any percentage of something which is asr, because what's going to happen? Once you pop, you can't stop. You're going to keep eating, and you're going to come to the isser. So it's even asr to eat less. Although the einish, the punishment, only comes when you hit the measurement amount, the olive's worth, the kazayas volume worth. But the prohibition would start even before, says Rabbi Yochanan, minat Torah, because of a svara, chazi l'tzarufei, it's going to combine. Because every bite you take, even if you don't eat an olive's worth at one time, if you eat it within a certain amount of time period, that's considered as if it's one achila, and you're going to come to the isser. So since it's very easy and very quick to come to the isser, you're going to keep eating, therefore it's also even less than the amount of an olive volume. However, the Gemara continues and then says, Rabbi Yochanan also learns out from a pasuk. The pasuk by chaylev, the prohibition of eating certain fats of the animal, says kol chaylev. The Gemara dashes from the word kol, from all that includes even less than the amount of the shiur of the kazayas worth. So again, Rabbi Yochanan first says the svara of chazi l'tzarufei is going to come to combine, and then he says we have also riboy from the pasuk of kol, which means includes everything, even if it's less than a kazayas. Taanis and the Rishonim there ask, why do we need 2 reasons for Rabbi Yochanan? Why does Rabbi Yochanan need the svara of it's going to be combined, chazi l'tzarufei, and why does he need the pasuk of kol chaylev? One is enough. He doesn't need 2 reasons. Why have a svara and a pasuk? So Taanis gives his reason, but Reb Chaim Ozer, the Achiezer, wants to suggest another possible explanation. He says as follows: if we just have the pasuk of kol chaylev, that we learn out from there that even less than the amount of a kazayas is asar mid'araisa, you would say perhaps that's maybe just by chaylev. That's limited to the prohibition of eating certain fats. That's where you can't eat more than a kazayas, less than a kazayas even. But any other yisurim, nevela, treifa, anything else, you can eat less than a kazayas perhaps. Therefore, Rabbi Yochanan also has this svara to extend it to everywhere, that every isser, let's say nevela, not only is the kazayas worth asr, but even less than it is also asr mid'araisa. What's the name of the isser? Says Achiezer, when I'm eating, or chas v'shalom, someone's eating a piece of nevela less than a kazayas worth, what isser is he transgressing? He's transgressing, the svar tells me, he's transgressing the isser of nevela itself. Again, so Chaim Ozer, Rachi Ezer is explaining that I have the pasuk which tells me that such a concept exists. That pasuk tells me by kol chela, by these forbidden fats, there's such a concept that even less than the shiur of a kazayas is aser. Comes along the svara of chazil starufei now and extends it to all other prohibitions. Let's say by nevela or treifa, and if a person chas shalom would eat nevela treifa even less than the amount of a kazayas, he's still transgressing the isser of nevela or treifa, etc. Whatever he's
but no onish.
aser. No onish, that's a special halacha. No onish until you get to the shiur.
So what do you need the pasuk?
Pasuk tells me that step one is that such a thing exists. Kol chelav tells me that such a thing exists. Now, however, he says there's a catch. Let's say a person makes a shvuah, takes an oath or a neder, a promise that he will not eat bread, or this loaf of bread. He's not going to eat it. So I'll you say in Hebrew, right? I will not eat, whatever you want to say, this piece of bread or this loaf of bread, right? So when you're using the lashon of a neder or a shavua, when you say the word achila connotes what? Kazayas, right? So I'm prohibiting upon myself to eat a kazayas of bread. How do I know it's even usher by neder or shavua less than a kazayas? You can't say that the isser of neder or shavua, says Reb Chaim Ozer, is what's prohibiting me to eat from less than a kazayas of bread, because the neder or shavua only obligates me to a kazayas, because I said eating. Eating, we use lashon HaTorah, is that I'm prohibited from eating a kazayas plus more of bread. How do I know I'm only eating? How do I know if I'm only eating less than a kazayas, it's still prohibited because of chatzi shiur? But again, we said by typical case of chatzi shiur, it tacks it on, it latches onto the original isser. But by neder and shvua, can't latch onto the original isser. Therefore, says Reb Chaim Ozer, by a neder or shvua, we have a different halacha of chatzi shiur that the kol chelev is what's going to tell me, because we always have to blame it on a pasuk. Again, it's a little technical. We'll just try to recap it again.
But
by chatzi shiur, let me just say it one more time. Right, 1 second. We'll say it one more time. By chatzi shiur, we have two things. According to Rabbi Yechon, we have the pasuk of kol chelev, and we have the svara of chazil starufei. We said by a typical case, let's say of nevela or treifa, the prohibition to eat less than it is learnt out from chazil starufei. Once we have the svara of chazil starufei, it tells me that the isra of nevela treifa now extends to even less than the amount of a kazayas. That's only where I have a isser from the Torah already, but where I accept upon myself, I make upon myself a new isser, like a shvua or a neder, an oath or a promise, I'm not going to do something. So you can't say that the isser, the lav of lo yachel devarav, of not transgressing a person's oath, or the asay of the shvua of kechol hayotzim mipiv yaseh, those lav and asay of neder and shvua will obligate me not to eat less than a kazayas worth, because the neder or shvua only bound me to a kazayas. So how do I know that even less than that is going to be usher? Says Reb Chaim Ozer, that's now I have the pasuk of kol chelav. I can use that over here, also I can borrow that pasuk for anywhere else. That's what he says. We can discuss it more exactly how he does that. Based on that, he wants to suggest as follows. He's very bothered. He likes the Aruch HaNer's pshat that they ate a kazayas worth of matzah, but less than a date, less than a kasevis worth of matzah. But he's bothered because Aruch HaNer said, you'll ask on me. Aruch HaNer himself asked this question: Chatzi shiur asam min haTorah. How can I allow you to eat a kazayas? It's chatzi shiur of a date. So Aruch HaNer said, no, it's a stipulation in the neder. Chaim Ozer says, no, you can't do that. You can't make a stipulation in the neder that I'm accepting upon myself to fast only a certain amount. If you're accepting upon yourself to fast, okay, fine, it's a good question, but take that for now for a minute. If you're accepting upon yourself to fast, that means I'm accepting upon myself to fast, no eating. No eating means no eating. How do I know, says Reb Chaim Ozer, that I can still eat with this chap, this lamdish chap? Says Reb Chaim Ozer, but with the way I'm explaining chatzi shiur, the only isser now to eat when a person takes a neder or shvu on himself is a riboy from kol chelev. I have on Pesach a mitzvah asay, a positive commandment to eat matzah. Comes along the mitzvah asay, the positive commandment of eating matzah, and that will knock off the only standing, so to speak, lav. It's like an asay doich alois asay of the chelev, because again, since there's no asay and lois asay here of the neder or the shvu they accept upon themselves this fast, a typical neder and shvu, let's just clarify this, has a lav and an asay. There's a lav. Anytime I accept upon myself, I will not do this. So if I transgress that, so there's a lav of lo yachel devarav. I'm profaning my words, and I'm also transgressing the asay of kechol hayotzim mipiv yaseh. Anything comes out of my mouth, I have to keep. But that would not obligate me in chatzi shiur, says Reb Chaim Ozer. What obligates me in chatzi shiur is only going to be the pasuk kol chelev. That's quote unquote only a lav. If I have now a positive commandment, says Reb Chaim Ozer, of eating matzah on Pesach night, comes along that asay and pushes away the lois asay of of Chatzi Shir over here, and that'll allow the Yidden to eat a kazayis of matzah on Pesach night. Okay, let's recap what we have so far before we go further. We have like this. We had the original Gemara Megillah where Rav said that they skipped over Pesach that year. We have the question of the Yaris Tavash of why the Gemara said they skipped over Pesach. Why did the Gemara say they skipped over the basic mitzvah of eating matzah? So we had two terutzim of Aruch LaNer. The first one was that the Medrash argues, and Medrash says they ate at night. So if they ate at night, so they fulfill the mitzvah of matzah. So that was, so to speak, the easy answer out. The second answer, which was more sophisticated of the Aruch LaNer, was that is only by a fast is the din of inui, of affliction. That din is the volume of a day's worth. And that's the prohibition of the fast. They ate a kazayis worth of matzah, so they got the etzem mitzvah of achilas matzah. We had a question of the Aruch LaNer from the Shoyel, from Mr. Meir Leib in the Tshuva, where he said that is specifically to Yom Kippur, because the Torah there says inui, Mashenkin over here where it says achila, eating, and Aruch LaNer deflected that by saying there's a difference between achila words in the Torah and achila words in the Nevi'im, where we can say that they only accepted upon himself the fast of an inui of a Yom Kippur take a fast. And then we had this Shiur, Rameir Lev himself's own pshat in understanding that they ate matzah in the days of Taanis Esther then as shaloi kederach achila, so that's considered a mitzvah of eating matzah, but that's not a kiyum of simcha, and therefore the Gemara says they skipped out the simcha of Pesach. Then we had the hezbollah of the Achiezer, and the Chatzi Shir is nitcha over here. There's no prohibition of Chatzi Shir over here because of Asay, Doicha Lois Asay, the Asay of Achilas Matzah is Doicha Lois Asay of the prohibition over here of Chatzi Shir. Now, there's a fundamental question which I'm bothered by, and no one asked me yet, which the Chazon Ish was bothered by, which is number 8. Number 8 is from Sefer Maisa Ish, which is a Sefer put out after the Chazon Ish passed away, of stories from the Chazon Ish. It's about 5 or 6 volumes. Fascinating stories, all types of great Litvish Maisas. And in one of the stories there brings down a discussion that took place between Reb Chaim Oizer, the Achiezer, and the Chazon Ish. And they were discussing this Shaila. The Yaris Tavash's question of why the Gemara says that Rav says that Mordechai skipped over Pesach that year, and the Gemara didn't say they just skipped over the mitzvah of matzah. And Chaim Oizer told the Chazon Ish, perhaps you could say like the Aruch LaNer, that they ate a kazayis of matzah, and etc. That whole piece we said before, like the Achiezer learned with the Chatzi Shir. To which the Chazon Ish responded, it's untenable. Because the Gemara in Yevamah said clearly, we see from these psukim that a person could survive for 3 nights and 3 days without food or drink. If you're going to tell me, Yeshiva Shalom this, that they had a kezayis, less than a keseves, or they ate shaloi kederach achila, all these terutzim are saying, to try to fit in that they had the mitzvah matzah, that's not going to stim with the Pasha Gemara. The Gemara said, we prove from here that a person could survive 3 days and 3 nights without food. If they ate a kazayis, even though it's a very minute amount, granted, but you can't say a person can't survive without food for 3 days and 3 nights.
You can say, yes, some people can, but not the old Klal Yisrael can't.
Well, we're saying that the Klal Yisrael ate matzah. Everybody did.
Right, but to say that they're going to survive 3 days and 3 nights without food, that's not everyone.
What do you mean? But we had hundreds of thousands of Jews did it in the times of Purim.
We're saying differently. We're not.
Well, we're saying, right, so if Pashas, the way the Gemara understood
it...
Repeat the question is, the Gemara in Yevamah said, we prove from the Psuk and the Megillah that a person could survive 3 days and 3 nights without food. Mm-hmm. Fine? That's what the Gemara says. So if we're proving it from Megillas Esther, we just went through a whole slew of terutzim to explain the Jews really ate less than a kazayis of, they ate only a kazayis of matzah, and they ate, but there wasn't a dates volume, or they ate like a derech achila, and it wasn't a problem of Chatzi Shir. We gave all those yeshivas terutzim. But the simple reading of the Gemara tells us they survived for 3 days and 3 nights without food.
It was only a man, not a woman.
I don't know, how do you know that?
You said the man, they couldn't find the man. You said the mice and Yevamah, the man, they fell in the water. It was a man, not a
woman. Fine, but you're right. Granted, maybe, okay, I don't have a proof to that, but the pasuk seemingly by the Megillah seems like even the women fasted. Right?
Because Esther did say that my servants...
Right, she's going to fast also. So, Pashas, the Gemara is telling us that you can survive 72 hours without food from the Megillah. So the Chazon Ish was bothered by all these terutzim. How's it going to fit? If you go to Medrash, that they ate at night, okay, good. Do you want to say they ate at night, but they ate the minimum amount because they didn't want to they wanted to keep as much fast as they could. So maybe you could say it's terutzim. But the simple reading of the Gemara comes out that they fasted. Fasted means fasted 72 hours, no food. Okay, that was the Chazon Ish question. Running out of time, let me just finish up as quickly as we can. So at this point, we have the Taanis, the fast days that we find in the Megillah were 3 days of fasting. Whether they fast 72 hours straight or not, that's a matter of dispute. Fine. Well, it was a 3-day fast. We fast on the 13th day of Adar. At most, it's 12 hours, roughly, right? No 72 hours, no 3 days, right? Nothing too exciting. So what are we doing? So like this. In number 9, we have the tour in Ar Chaim and Hilchos Taanis Esther, which brings down, there is an opinion that though there are some people who fast 3 days in the month of Adar, and such an opinion is recorded in the Brisa Masechta Sofrim, that the people fast 3 days in the month of Adar as a remembrance of the fast of Esther. Esther's fast was in Nisan, and we're fasting in Adar. That's because Chazal didn't want to be koveya a fast in the month of Nisan, because Nisan is the Chodesh HaGeula. We were redeemed from Mitzrayim. It's a whole month. We don't say Tachana, all types of exciting things go on. The Mishkan was built then, or dedicated then, right? So we don't want to decree a specific fast for Nisan. Therefore, there are some people who commemorate the 3-day fasts in the month of Adar.
What about Marba V'Simcha though?
Okay, hold on. Fine. However, the Beis Yosef in number 10, don't try to finish up. Number 10, the Beis Yosef says, and the last line of Beis Yosef there says that the Matzah is not our custom because it's to be too cumbersome on the tzibur for people to fast 3 days. So we don't want to fast 3 days. It's too hard for everybody. We can't make such a decree. However, I saw a fascinating in number 11. It's the Chidah. The Chidah in his Sefer, the Chidah wrote close to 70 Sfarim. So one of his Sfarim called Kisei Rachamim, which is on Masechta Sofrim, he brings this Beis Yosef that says it'll be too cumbersome on the people to fast because, it's 3 days of fasting is not within our range. He says, however, he was a witness to the Heilige Ar Chaim HaKadosh, Reb Chaim ben Attar. And the reason why it's called the Heilige Ar Chaim HaKadosh, because he was a big tzaddik and a big Talmid Chacham. He was also a big Baal Avodah. And his minig was, the Chidah writes, he actually fasted 3 days in Adar, 3 complete days, it sounds like, 72 hours. And the Chidah writes, I don't know exactly what this means, maybe the Kabbalists among us could explain it to me, but the Chidah writes that if someone fasts for 3 days straight, the Arizal says, it's as if he fasted for 40 days, ki yadua, like as if it's known to the people who are well versed in the books of Kabbalah, and therefore, says the Chidah, although it's not our custom to fast 3 days, you should just know the Ar Chaim HaKadosh did it, and it's a good thing. It's as if you fasted 40 days. Okay, let's just quickly end up. The Matzah, why we fasted in Gimel Adar, is another whole discussion in the Rishonim. I just quoted the Mishnah Berurah, number 13, brings down from the Rush. The Rush explains, he makes an assumption. We know when the Yidden in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu went to fight against Amalek at the end of Parshas B'Shalach, so the Medrash tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu fasted as a way of ensuring that the Yidden will daven properly at that time and they'll have Hatzlacha in their fast. Says the Mishnah Berurah based on the Rush that we could assume that when the Yidden went to fight in the days of Mordechai and Esther, when was the main Milchama? In the month of Adar, right? 11 months after Haman was killed. They went to fight in the Gimel Adar, so we can assume that they fasted, just like Moshe Rabbeinu fasted when they went to war with Amalek. Since we can assume the Yidden fast at that time, to commemorate that fast, we also fast then. Nothing to do with what we've been discussing till now, according to this Mishnah Berurah, which is the name of the Rush. And the reason why we call it Taanis Esther, says the Mishnah Berurah, is simply because Liskar Hashem Yisbarach Roya V'Shamea Kol Ish Beis Rasa, Hashem remembers us, and Esther was the one who really put herself out for Klal Yisrael. I just wanted to end off with a fascinating Magid Meisharim. Magid Meisharim is a sefer from the Beis Yosef. Beis Yosef wrote numerous svarim. Magid Meisharim is one of the most fascinating ones because it's the conversations that Beis Yosef had with the Malach. Beis Yosef had a midnight chavrusa with the Malach, and the Malach was Megaltim, many Razi HaTorah, many secrets of Torah. And over here the Malach is Megaltim, what's the secret behind Taanis Esther? What's the secret behind the 13th day of Adar? And the Malach tells him as follows. What's going to happen on Yudal Adar, on the 14th day of Adar? Everyone's going to drink, be merry, eat, and have a good time. That's a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe to give a pischain peh, to give a mouth, an opening for the Samuel, for the bad malachim to come to be prosecuted against us. Say, look at these Jewish people, look what they're doing. They're drinking, they're eating, they're being too merry. They don't know how to control themselves, and it could chas v'shalom be a tremendous kitrig on Klal Yisrael. Therefore, Chazal were mekaveya dafka to fast the day before. We're not going, eating, drinking, be merry, just having a party on Purim. We're in control of ourselves. So much so the day before we're able to fast. We're not going to fall to our desires. We're not going to just let ourselves be low and just be a bunch of drunkards on Purim. We're in control of ourselves. The day before we fasted, we rose above our physicality. Human beings need to eat. Nonetheless, we're able to show ourselves that we can control our tendencies, our human tendencies, and we can hold ourselves back from food for a whole day. comes along Purim the next day, and now we're eating and drinking, be merry. So that's a merit for us in saying, look, yesterday we fasted, we dedicated the fact that we can control ourselves. Today we're going to eat, drink, and be merry, but we're also able to keep ourselves in sync and realize that the whole thing is for Avodas Hashem and not just to have a party. So we dafka fast, and Yud Gimel, says the Maggid, the Malach told the Beis Yosef to show these malachim that want to prosecute against us and try to bring out some type of claim against us that we're just having a party is not true. We're always in control of ourselves. We should be zeiche to have a freilich de Purim. And I'd like to end off that, as many of you know, tonight, or probably everyone knows already, tonight is the Kollel's yearly event, and it's a big chizik for the Kollel. Everyone can come, and looking forward to seeing everyone tonight. Shkoyach.